Well, I want to welcome all of you, thanking you for being perfectly on time. Thank you for being here at this press conference, so numerous. I will not say much about our curator. He has already been introduced. We have already spoken about the reasons of the choice of a curator who for the first time comes from South America. We had never had a curator of the art exhibition coming from that part of the world. I thank you again, you all, for being here. I'm glad that today I'm passing the presidency to Pierangelo Buttafuoco. We are managing this passage in fully respecting the institution, and so that everything that will take place will be in line with the quality Biennale deserves. Thank you, Pierangelo, for being here with us. The press conference to present the 60th International Art Exhibition of La Biennale di Venezia, curated by Adriano Pedrosa, coincides with the end of my term as president. The first act of this past four-year term was the organization of the exhibition that disquieted muses, La Biennale di Venezia Meets History, curated by the 6 artistic directors of the time: Alberto Barbera for cinema, Marie Chouinard for dance, Ivan Fedele for music, Antonio Latella for theater, Hashim Sarkis for architecture, coordinated by Cecilia Lemani, artistic director of Biennale Arte for 2022. It presented materials from the historic archive in the central pavilion of the Giardini that was empty due to the postponement of the International Architecture Exhibition due to the COVID pandemic. That titled La Biennale di Venezia Meets History turned out to be prophetic in its own way, given the many historic and unfortunately tragic events that have occurred over the past 4 years, and which we would never have expected to see again: the pandemic, the Russian aggression to Ukraine, Hamas's attack on Israel as a consequence of October, and the tragic consequences in the Gaza Strip. The La Biennale's international nature makes it a privileged vantage point from which to observe the state of the world through the transformation and evolution of the arts. No curator, in choosing the theme of their exhibition, seeks directly to engage in a hot topic discussion, but all of them are influenced by them and the changing perception of the exhibitions themselves may be felt in the way they are interpreted by visitors, professionals in the field, and the press. But it is first and foremost the real presence of the national pavilions, the historic pavilions in the Giardini, and more recently the ones that have been added at the Arsenale and in other venues around the city, that this year reached 90 participating countries, that make La Biennale a unique meeting ground between the arts and the changes in society. So 30 participating countries and 30 collateral events this year. The autonomy of the artistic directors is the strongest guarantee that La Biennale di Venezia formula continues to work and produce sometimes surprising effects, even on the diplomatic and political level. These are the themes that the new International Center for Research on Contemporary Arts and the Historic Archive have begun to explore with scholars, students, educators, and researchers in meetings and activities organized in Venice throughout the year. And this is the legacy that those who preceded him leave to Adriano Pedrosa, the first curator of Biennale Arte from South America, and his exhibition titled Foreigners Everywhere, a universal and transversal theme of a burning relevance if observed from the global south. I would like to thank Adriano for accepting to conduct, for the second time following Cecilia Alemani, the Biennale College Arte, dedicated to young artists under the age of 30. College is a unique tool with which to offer young artists the opportunity to break into the international world of art. We have just finished celebrating the 100th anniversary of the birth of Luigi Nono, not only with the new production of Prometeo, La tragedia dell'ascolto, 40 years after its premiere in the Church of San Lorenzo, but also with a one-day seminar dedicated to the Venetian composer. I would like to mention that in Parco Forte Marghera and il Teatro della Bisuale in Mestre, we have organized a number of events open to everybody. Tomorrow is the opening day of the 15th International Kids Carnival, which will offer its traditional workshops and encounters for schools and families. And this year's edition will be enriched with the original program of dance performances on ice in Mestre, a preview of the Biennale Danza directed by Wayne McGregor. These are some of the activities of the Historical Archive of Contemporary Arts, carried out with the aim of bringing different audiences closer to our institution. We would like to thank all participating countries and new national participations, the institutions and the authorities supporting La Biennale, the Ministry of Culture, the City of Venice, the Veneto region, the Superintendency for Archaeology, Fine Arts, for the Municipality of Venice and the Laguna, and the Italian Navy. Our thanks go to the event's Partners Watch, to the main sponsor, Ili Cafe, and to the sponsors American Express, Bloomberg Philanthropies, and Vela Venezia Unica. We thank the important international donors, organizations, and institutions who have contributed to this Biennale. We thank Adriano Pedrosa and his team. And finally, we would like to thank everyone at La Biennale for the professionality and the dedication they have demonstrated in realizing and administering this exhibition. Thank you.
La parola, Adriano.
The floor now to Adriano Pedrosa. Thank you, Roberto.
And to understand much of what Roberto says. I can follow much of it, but not all, and certainly cannot speak. So I will need actually translation later on. So it has been a really extraordinary journey. This whole research period has been very intense last year as we finalized the list of artists and the checklist of the exhibition, which is, of course, finalized at this stage. It's an extraordinary journey with conversations with many artists, curators, colleagues in different parts of the world. I'm very grateful to all of them. I'm grateful to my own team, the team working with directly with the curator, the curators team, as we call it, Amanda Carneiro and Sofia Gocci, the artistic organizers, Juliana Zibel, the architect, and Paola Chinocco, the graphic designer, who has made the wonderful design and identity that we are presenting today. I'm also, of course, very grateful to Roberto and the board who appointed me, and all the team at the Biennale, and also grateful for all the donors. We have a group of many donors that are supporting the exhibition, as well as the sponsors and the galleries and the collectors and the critics and the curators. It's really a large network of people that support this exhibition and have showed an incredible incredible enthusiasm and very generous support towards this project that we are presenting today, which you might be curious. We have 332 artists in the exhibition. And I will now turn to my statement, which you will receive later on. And some images. I've selected about 40 images that are somehow referenced in the text. So, Stranieri ovunque, foreigners everywhere. The title of the 60th International Exhibition of La Biennale di Venezia is drawn from a series of works made by the Paris-born and Palermo-based collective Clairefontaine since 2004. The works consist of neon sculptures in different colors that render in a growing number of languages the expression foreigners everywhere. The expression was in turn appropriated from the name of a collective from Turin that in the early 2000s fought racism and xenophobia in Italy, Stranieri ovunque. There are currently some 53 languages in Clairefontaine's series of neon sculptures, both Western and non-Western, including several indigenous languages, some that are in fact extinct. And this large group of neon sculptures will be exhibited at the Biennale Arte this year in a new large-scale installation in the iconic Gagendre shipyards in the Arsenale. The backdrop for the work of Clairefontaine and of Stranieri ovunque is a world rife with multifarious crises concerning the movement and existence of people across countries, nations, territories, and borders, which reflect in turn the perils and pitfalls of language, translation, nationality, expressing differences and disparities conditioned by race, identity, nationality, gender, sexuality, freedom, and wealth. In this panorama, the expression foreigners everywhere has several meanings. First of all, that wherever you go and wherever you are, you will always encounter foreigners. They, we, are everywhere. Secondly, that no matter where you find yourself, you are always truly and deep down inside a foreigner. In addition, the expression Stranieri ovunque takes on a very particular site-specific meaning in Venice, a city whose original population consisted of refugees from Roman cities, a city that was at one point the most important center for international trade and commerce in the Mediterranean, a city that was the capital of the Republic of Venice, dominated by Napoleon Bonaparte and taken over by Austria, and whose population today consists of some 50,000 residents that may reach 165,000 in a single day during peak seasons, due to the enormous number of tourists and travelers in the city, foreigners of a privileged kind visiting Venice. Here, foreigners are everywhere. Yet one may also think of the expression as a motto, a slogan, a call to action, a cry of excitement, joy, or fear. Foreigners everywhere. More importantly, it assumes a critical signification today in Europe, around the Mediterranean, and in the world, when the number of forcibly displaced people hit the highest in 2022, last 2 years ago, at 108.5 million, according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and it's a number that is expected to have grown even more in 2023. Artists have always traveled and moved about under various circumstances, through cities, countries, and continents, something that has only accelerated since the last 20th century. Ironically, a period marked by increasing restrictions regarding the dislocation or displacement of people. The Biennale Arte 2024's primary focus is thus artists who are themselves foreigners, immigrants, expatriates, diasporic, emigres, exiled, or refugees, particularly those who have moved between the global south and the global north. Migration and decolonization are, of course, key themes here. The Italian stranieri, the Portuguese estrangeiro, the French étranger, and the Spanish extranjero are all etymologically connected to the estranho, the étranger, the extraño, respectively, which is precisely the stranger in English. Sigmund Freud's unheimlich comes to mind, the uncanny in English, which in Portuguese has indeed been translated as o estranho, the strange that is also familiar within, deep down inside. According to the American Heritage and Oxford Dictionary, the first meaning of queer, of the word queer, is indeed strange. And thus the exhibition unfolds and focuses on the production of other related subjects beyond the foreigner. The queer artist who has moved within different sexualities and genders, often being persecuted or outlawed, the outsider artist who is located at the margins of the art world, much like the self-taught artist, the folk artist, and the artista popular, as we call them in Brazil and Latin America, as well as the indigenous artist, frequently treated as a foreigner in his or her own land. The production of these four subjects are the interest of the Biennale, constituting the international exhibition's nucleo contemporâneo. And although their work is often informed by their own lives, reflections, narratives, and histories, there are also those who delve into more formal issues with their own strange, foreign, or indigenous accent. Indigenous artists have an emblematic presence in the international exhibition, and their work will greet the public in the central pavilion, where the Macu collective from Brazil will paint a monumental mural on the building's facade. And in the Corderie, in the Arsenale, where the Mataho collective, the Maori collective, from Aotearoa, New Zealand, will present a large-scale installation in the first room of the Corderie. Two other very iconic locales in the exhibition in Venice. Queer artists appear throughout the exhibition and are also the subject of a large section in the Corderie, which gathers works by artists from Canada, such as Erica Rutherford, China, Hong Kong, such as Isaac Chong, India, Mexico, Nicaragua, such as Elila, Pakistan, Peru, such as Violeta Quispe, the Philippines, South Africa, and the US, such as Louis Fratino and Dean Sameshima, and another room devoted to queer abstraction in the central pavilion, with works by artists from China, such as Evelyn Tao Cheng Wong, who lives in the Netherlands, Italy, and the Philippines. From Europe, three of its most remarkable female outsider artists are presented. Madge Gill from the United States, from the United Kingdom, Anna Zemankova Oops, I'm missing this one. Anna Zemankova from the Czech Republic and Aloise from Switzerland. The Núcleo Contemporâneo, will feature a special section in the Corderie devoted to the Disobedience Archive, a project by Milan-based curator Marcus Cottini, which since 2005 has been developing a video archive focusing on the relationships between artistic practices and activism. In the Biennale, the presentation of the Disobedience Archive is designed by our architect Juliana Zibel in collaboration with Marcus Cottini. And Zibel, of course, is also working in the exhibition architecture of the entire international exhibition. The Disobedience Archive section is divided into two parts, especially conceived for our framework, focusing on films and videos that are somehow related to diaspora activism and gender disobedience, and will include works by 39 artists and collectives made between 1975 and 2023. So this is the Núcleo Contemporâneo. The second núcleo is the Núcleo Histórico. The Núcleo Histórico will gather works from 20th century, Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Much has been written about global modernisms and modernisms in the global south, and a number of rooms will feature works from these territories, much like an essay, a draft, a speculative curatorial exercise that seeks to question the boundaries and definitions of modernism. We are all too familiar with the histories of modernism in Euro-America, yet the modernisms in the global south remain largely unknown. Knowledge about these is limited to specialists in each individual country or region at best, yet connecting and exhibiting these works together will be somehow revealing. It is in this sense that these histories assume a truly contemporary relevance. We urgently need to learn more about and from them. Additionally, European modernism traveled far beyond Europe throughout the 20th century, often intertwined with colonialism, and many artists in the global south traveled to Europe to be exposed to modernism. In this process, modernism was appropriated and devoured in the global south. The reference here is to Oswaldo de Andrade's, a Brazilian modernist intellectual, Oswaldo de Andrade's notion of anthropophagia, offered as a tool to the modern intellectual at the margins of Europe, particularly in the 20th century, to appropriate metropolitan culture, European culture, cannibalizing it and producing something of his or her own. Anthropophagia, of course, evokes the cannibalistic practice of the indigenous Tupinambá people in pre-invasion Brazil, prior to the so-called invasion of the Portuguese to the country in 1500s. The unique, distinct types of modernism around the global south assume radically new figures, shapes, and forms, as they often dialogue with local and indigenous narratives and references. Núcleo Histórico. 3 rooms are planned for the Núcleo Histórico, with 1 work each, mostly paintings, but also works on paper and sculpture. With 1 work by each artist, mostly paintings, but also works on paper and sculpture, spanning the years 1905 to 1990. It is difficult to establish a strict overarching chronology here, as the processes may be quite singular in each country or region, often following their own idiosyncratic courses. In the central pavilion, One room is devoted to portraits and representations of the human figure, and a second room is devoted to abstraction. So, núcleo contemporâneo, núcleo histórico. Núcleo histórico is many divisions in the exhibition. Núcleo histórico has 3 sections: abstraction, portraits, and the Italian diaspora, which I'll speak in a little bit. The double room named Portraits includes works by 112 artists from Algeria, Aotearoa, New Zealand, such as Selwyn Wilson, the first Maori artist to enter a museum collection in Aotearoa, New Zealand, Argentina, Brazil, such as Cícero Dias and Ieda Maria, Bolivia, Chile, such as Laura Rodig, a wonderful portrait of Gabriela Mistral, who was her partner, China, Colombia, with a sculpture by very iconic sculptor in Colombian modernism, Rómulo Rosso, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Egypt, with Ingi Eflatun, who is participating for the second time. Okwi and Wezo had exhibited her work. Ghana, with the work of Grace Kuwami. Guatemala, India, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Jamaica, Korea, with a wonderful portrait by Quid Lee. Lebanon, Malaysia, Mexico, Mozambique, Nigeria, Pakistan, Peru, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, Singapore, South Africa, Sri Lanka, Sudan, Tunisia, Turkey, Uruguay, Venezuela, Vietnam, and Zimbabwe. I was told my list of countries were very long, but I feel quite attached to them. The selection shows how the human figure has been explored in countless different ways by artists in the Global South, reflecting on the crisis of representation around the very figure that marked much of the art in the 20th century. In the Global South, again, many artists were in touch with European modernism through travels, studies, or books, yet they bring their own highly personal and powerful reflections and contributions to these works. Most pictures depict non-white characters, which in Venice, at the heart of the Biennale, becomes an eloquent feature of this large heterogeneous group and the exhibition itself. The room devoted to, we had Cicutto, the wonderful self-portrait of South African Cicutto as well. All right, so now to abstractions. The room devoted to abstractions includes works by 37 artists from Argentina, Aotearoa, New Zealand, such as Sandy Adset, again a Maori artist there, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, a painting by Fanny Sani, Colombian artist living in New York, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Egypt, Guatemala, India, Indonesia, Iraq, Jordan, Korea, Lebanon, with a painting by Atel Adnan, the first time she is participating in the Biennale. Mexico, with a picture using textiles, in fact, or threads by the Mexican Eduardo Terraza. Morocco, Pakistan, Palestine, with a wonderful painting by Samia Halabi, Palestinian artist living in New York. The Philippines, Puerto Rico, South Africa, and Turkey. A key reference here in the room devoted to abstraction is the extraordinary Casablanca School. Let me see if I have... No. Is the Casablanca School of painters from Morocco. Sorry, there you go. Some of which will be presented at the Biennale for the first time. What is of interest is a certain type of abstraction that detaches itself from the European constructivist abstract geometric tradition with its rigid orthogonal grid of verticals and horizontals and its palette of primary colors in order to privilege more organic curvilinear shapes and forms. Most of these artists are being exhibited together for the first time. Most of these artists are being presented in the many have been presented in the 20th century but have not been presented within the 21st century. They are being exhibited certainly here together for the first time, and we will learn from these unforeseen juxtapositions in the flesh, which will then hopefully point towards new connections, associations, parallels, and histories much beyond the rather straightforward category that I have proposed, portraits and abstractions. Although not technically part of the Global South any longer, artists from Singapore and Korea have been brought into these sections, given that at the time in mid-century, 40s, 50s, and 60s, they were still part of the so-called Third World. In a similar manner, Selwyn Wilson and Sandy Adsett, whose work I showed, from Aotearoa, New Zealand, have been brought into the Núcleo Histórico, given that they are historical Maori artists and given our focus on indigenous artists in general. With the inclusion of the vast majority of these artists in the Núcleo Histórico at La Biennale di Venezia for the first time, I hope a historical debt is paid towards them. A third room in the Núcleo Histórico is devoted to the worldwide Italian diaspora in the 20th century. Italian artists who traveled and moved abroad, developing their careers mostly in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, but we do have a couple of artists that also moved about in Europe and the United States. Artists who become embedded in local cultures and who often played significant roles in the development of the narratives of modernisms beyond Italy itself. Lidi Prati, our second-generation Italian artist from Argentina, of course, two of the largest communities of Italian diaspora are precisely in Brazil and in Argentina. Bona de Mandierkis, Nena Sanguinetti, who lived in Ethiopia and Eritrea, and Gianni Bertini. This room will feature works by 40 artists who, as I said, are first or second generation, actually born in Italy, exhibited in Lina Bobardi's glass easel display system. This is what I'm showing here, is the glass easel display system at the São Paulo Art Museum. Bobardi herself, an Italian born in Rome, who moved to Brazil, became a Brazilian citizen, and who won the 2021 Biennale Architettura's Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement in Memoriam. Two quite different but related elements have emerged rather organically in the research and have been developed, appearing as leitmotifs throughout the international exhibition. The first one is textiles, which have been explored by many artists in the show, both in the Núcleo Histórico and in the Núcleo Contemporâneo. For example, key historical artists such as Olga de Amaral, Eduardo Terrazas from Mexico, whose work I showed, and Mónica Correia from India in the Núcleo Histórico, and other artists in the Italian diaspora section as well. And many artists in the Núcleo Contemporâneo, including Agnes Waruguru, Ahmed Umar, Ana Zemankova, Antonio Guzman and Eva Jankovic, the Bordadoras de Isla Negra a collective from Chile, whose work I'm showing here. Bushra Halili, Claudia Alarcón Encilat, the collective. Dana Awartani, a Palestinian artist living in Saudi Arabia. Frida Toranzo-Jäger from Mexico. This is, at times, it's not the actual work that is being exhibited. Frida and Dana are producing new works for the exhibition. These are reference images because they are, as it were, from the same series. Gunis Terkol, still artist working somehow with textiles. Kang Seung Lee, Liz Collins, the Mataho Collective from the Maori Collective, whose work I showed already, opening the Corderie. Nur Juda, the wonderful Pasita Bad from the Philippines, Paula Nisho, Sangodari Ayala, Shalom Kufkawatenzi, Susan Wenger, and Yinka Shonibari, as well as with the Chilean arpilleristas. These works, the textile-based works, which is one of the motifs in the exhibition, reveal an interest in craft, tradition, and the handmade, and in techniques that were at times considered other or foreign, outsider or strange in the larger field of visual arts. A second motif is family of artists, artists related by blood. So these are not the focus of the exhibition, but they have emerged as motifs throughout the research. So we have Andrés Curuchichi from Guatemala and his granddaughter, Joselena Curuchichi, being exhibited in the same room. Abel Rodriguez, indigenous artist, and his son Ayukobo from Colombia, often indigenous artists. Fred Graham and his son Brett Graham, Maori artists from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Juana Marta and her daughter Julia Isidris from Paraguay, Guarani artists from Paraguay. The Macu, who I've showed, Movimento dos Artistas Runicuim, the Runicuim collective from the western part of the Brazilian Amazon region. Joseca and Taniki Yanomami from the northern part of the same Amazon Brazilian region. Santiago Uarcani and his father Rember Uarcani, indigenous artist from Peru. Maybe, oops. All right. An interesting duo, Susan Wenger, the Austrian artist that moved to Nigeria, and her adopted son, Sangodari Ashala from Nigeria. The brothers Philomé and Senek Aubin from Haiti. And another interesting pair, Lorna Céline and Jewad Céline, the husband and wife from Iraq and the UK. Again, tradition plays an important role here. The transmission of knowledge and practices from father or mother to son or daughter, or among siblings and relatives. As a guiding principle, the Biennale Arte 2024 has favored artists who never participated in the international exhibition, though a number of them will have been featured in a national pavilion or a collateral event in the Núcleo Contemporâneo, and many artists have participated in the 20th century in the Núcleo Histórico. Special attention is being given to outdoor projects, both in the Arsenale, with works by Ana Maria Maiolino, who is our Golden Lion for Lifetime, one of our Golden Lions for Lifetime Achievement, Beatriz Cortés, Claire Fontaine, Lauren Halsey, Leila Babiri and Taylor Nikomo. And also outdoor projects in the Giardini with works by Ivan Argotti, who is here today. Ivan, thank you for your presence where you are. Thank you. We have an artist in the room. Ivan Argotti, Mariana Telleria, Ryndon Johnson, and Sol Calero. Performance program is being planned also with events during the opening and the closing days of the exhibition. I'd also like to mention the Applied Arts Pavilion, which is not part of the international exhibition, so it's not Foreigners Everywhere, Stranieri Ovunque, but a special pavilion, Applied Arts Pavilion, that is developed in collaboration with the Victoria and Albert Museum, and the artists featured there. It's a space in the Arsenale. The artist featured there is Beatriz Milhazes, who has participated in a Brazilian national pavilion some 15 years ago, never in the international exhibition. She's making new paintings, and her work is very much referencing applied arts, and she will show also a collection of textiles in this respect, thinking about the collaboration with the Victoria and Albert Museum. The catalogue and the short guide of the Biennale Arte 2024 and its international exhibition is being designed by Paula Tinoco from Estúdio Campo in São Paulo and edited by myself with the collaboration of our two artistic organizers, Amanda Carneiro and Sofia Gotch, who is also here. Thank you, Sofia. We have invited over 100 authors from different parts of the world to write the more than 300 artists' entries in the book, privileging a polyphonic approach to the publication. The catalogue also features interviews with the two artists who won the Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement, Ana Maria Maiolino, conducted by Amanda Carneiro, and Nui Alter, an interview conducted by Sofia Gocci. Another interview with Claire Fontaine conducted by myself, and a conversation between me and Julieta Gonzalez. In addition, the catalogue includes essays by Jaide Resbel, Cabina Mercer, Luz Delir, Naina Terena, Hanajit Gutha, Cício Escobar, and Walter Mignolo. In a personal level, I myself feel very implicated in many of these themes, concepts, motifs, and frameworks in the exhibition. I have lived abroad and have been fortunate to travel extensively during my lifetime. Yet often I have also experienced the treatment reserved to a third world foreigner, as I am, although never a refugee, and in fact holding one of the highest ranking passports from the global south, according to the Henley Passport Index, very interesting index. I also identify myself as queer, the first openly queer curator in the history of the Biennale Arte. Moreover, I come from a context in Brazil and Latin America where the indigenous artists and the artista popular play crucial roles, although they also have been marginalized in art history, in local art history. Brazil is also home to many diasporas, including, as I said, the largest Italian diaspora in the world. A land of foreigners, as it were. Besides the Portuguese, who invaded and colonized the country, it is also home to the largest African diaspora, Japanese and Lebanese diasporas, as well as the Italian. La Biennale itself, as an international event with so many official participations and collateral events by numerous different countries, has always been a platform for the exhibition of works by foreigners from all over the world. In this rich tradition, the 60th International Exhibition of La Biennale di Venezia, the Biennale Arte 2024, will be a celebration of the foreign, the distant, the outsider, the queer, as well as the indigenous. Lastly, I would like to express my deepest gratitude once again to the board of La Biennale di Venezia and to President Roberto Cicutto, who appointed me as artistic director of the visual arts sector in December in 2022, a little bit over a year ago, which has been very, very intense. It seems incredible. And of course, in charge of curating the Biennale Arte 2024. Thank you very much.
Grazie Adriano.
Thank you, Adriano.
It's part of your exhibition. A Forte Marghera.
In Forte Marghera, for many years, the Biennale has its own spot. We will have 10 works by the Italian artist Nedda Guidi, who is in competition in the international exhibition. They will be exhibited in the building that is known as La Polveriera Austriaca. And she has been invited for the alternative techniques she has adopted with ceramics. Not just an artist with ceramics, but someone fundamental for the evolution of modern ceramics. Allow me to remember a couple of things. The Italian pavilion, Padiglione Italia, the Ministry of Culture, through the commissioner, invites a curator who chooses the artist at the Tese delle Vergini in the Arsenale, promoted by the Ministry of Culture, will be curated by Luca Cerizza with the project Due Qui/2 Here by Massimo Bartolini, with contributions of musicians, writers, and authors. We will have back in Biennale Arte the Holy Seat with its pavilion, promoted by Cardinale Tosentino de Mendonça, and will be located today in the prison, female prison in Venice, in Giudecca, in the island of Giudecca. The location provides for activities for the prisoners and will be curated by Chiara Parisi and Bruno Racine. Before passing the floor to Carlo Giordanetti, CEO of Swatch, our main sponsor, I want to thank Adriano, because besides the conversations about his exhibition, he had promised to me that he would bring a lot of beauty to this exhibition, and I've seen a lot of beauty already. I would now invite Carlo Giordanetti, CEO of Swatch, here on stage. We thank him for the support he gives to the Biennale and to culture in general. Thank you. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here. This is the 7th edition with Swatch at the Biennale di Venezia to tell about its collaboration with contemporary artists. We have this tradition, we change the colors every year, but we define ourselves as Swatch Faces because we present not only works of art, but also artists. We present artists. What is in the Arsenale is the experience of some artists who have been with us in residence in Shanghai for 7 years, for 11 years now. We have a residence for artists in Shanghai, the Swatch Art Peace Hotel, an historic building that was restored by Swatch giving it back to the role of residence for artists. It is a hotel, but it is in reality a residence for artists. We have apartments and 18 ateliers with 18 artists from all over the world. They come from all disciplines, and they come from different countries. And foreigners everywhere is a perfect title for our project. We have chosen 5 artists. This is a couple coming from Argentina. I was really interested in listening to what the curator was saying. We deal with textile here, and we are in the south of the world. This installation will have the artists inviting the audience to participate with a real or virtual dialogue with themselves, depicted in these pieces of cloth. A Chinese artist, Jana Nuhu, who works building high relief, describing the reality we live in, so difficult and full of problems, with pop icons. You see here the participation of Tom and Jerry to the announcement of a catastrophic event. So a two-level interpretation of the reality in his works. An Israeli artist, Maya Gelfman, she lives in Paris. She will represent in a triptych the universe of the city of Shanghai, its dynamic nature and its continuous transformation. Juan Pablo Chipe from Mexico, with a very pop gesture. He was born in Tijuana. He lived the first part of his life on the border, divided between the Mexican and the American culture in a continuous dialogue, or fight better. He will present this character of the Simpson, Marge, with the face of Frida Kahlo. He has put together the American pop culture with an icon of the Mexican culture. It is a 5 meters high statue. Hard not to notice it. And we finish with a video art artist. She works on the challenge between a two-dimensional surface and a 3D performance in her work. We also have a space in I Giardini. In the past years, we had Joanna Vasconcelos in 2015, Jan Davenport in 2017, Joe Tilson in 2019 with the installation of flags devoted to Venetian architecture. Last year, 2 years ago, Navin Ravanchekul from Thailand, who had made a fantastic work for foreigners everywhere, as he was dealing with the communities of migrants who have established in Venice. This year we will have a Japanese artist, a very young Japanese artist, who will send a very positive and inclusive message, something that is at the center of the spirit of Swatch. Thank you.
Grazie ancora. Io direi...
Thank you again. I think we can open up to Cristiana Costanzo and the questions from the audience, if there are any. A few minutes to organize the microphones. Please introduce yourself. Sara D'Ascenzo.
Buongiorno.
Good morning. Corriere del Veneto. I have a question for President Cicutto and one for the curator. For the President, a practical question. After the recent events in Vicenza, I wonder whether you are planning to increase the surveillance for the Israeli pavilion, considering the current situation? Or do you think that everything will be as usual, as there was already particular attention to the Israeli pavilion? For the curator, I was really surprised in moments when art is dematerializing and a lot of attention is paid to artificial intelligence and to NFC. Your exhibition focuses on man and on concrete reality. Is it a gesture of reaction to the current trends to dematerialize art? Sara, you attend not only the Art Biennale, but you know that we collaborate with the different authorities all over the year. So with this dialogue, we keep into account the different needs that might arise. A great example of something good, not only to protect people and places from violent acts, was COVID. Without the collaboration with the health institution, with the police and other authorities, we wouldn't have been able to organize the cinema festival, the movie festival, during the period of COVID.
So I don't see the exhibition as reacting. I mean, indeed, I elected certain subjects and a certain framework, but it's not a reaction against artificial intelligence or works that somehow deal with that. There is one work that I think it will reference that in the exhibition, but it's just a certain number of subjects that I chose. So I think if you look at a sequence of Biennale editions, it's always desirable that there is some diversity among Biennales and that we don't all run towards certain current or contemporary or more I would say current, not to use trendy, but current themes and topics. So, maybe hopefully another biennial can focus on that, but definitely I'm not really against it. It's not a reaction. I mean, the way I see an exhibition and the international exhibition, it's one possible exhibition among many, many others. It's not the definitive exhibition. It's not the only exhibition. Of course, it is a privileged framework and a privileged point of view because I'm the one with all the artists that are really getting this platform. But that doesn't rule out, I think, hopefully, it doesn't rule out other points of view, other frameworks, other themes and topics that might be equally relevant. I hope I replied.
Yes.
Posso? Buongiorno, sono...
Good morning, Roberto Nardi, ANSA. I was curious about the part referring to the artists that have a blood a link, a broad relationship. In our artistic tradition, we have the Renaissance schools that have a long tradition of this type. But I do not think that in contemporary art there is much of this tradition. What kind of relationship did you find? Is it just blood? Is it tradition? Is it the approach to sculpture or painting, a link related to the type of study that was done by the artists?
Yeah, I think that was really quite a fascinating motif, as I said, that I encountered very organically in the exhibition. They are mostly indigenous artists, mostly contemporary artists, but some also artists that worked in the 20th century. So Andres Curuchichi and Joselena Curuchichi, they are painters from Comalapa, a small city in Guatemala that houses a tradition of many wonderful artists there. Abel Rodriguez and Aikobo are indigenous artists from Colombia practicing today quite actively. Brett and Fred Graham. So Aikobo and Abel working mostly in drawing. Fred Graham working in, we will show some wood reliefs of his from the 60s. And Brett, they are Maori artists, so also indigenous artists from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Brett is making a large-scale sculpture. Juana Marta and Julia Isidris are ceramicists, so working in sculpture. Juana Marta no longer alive, Julia Isidris living in a small city, Ita, in Paraguay. The Maku, of course, as we see, they make paintings, they make works on paper, they make, it's a collective of artists from Junicuin in the western part of the Amazon, and they will do the large-scale facade. I'm just going through each one that I've mentioned. José and Taniki Yanomami working mostly in drawings, indigenous artists. Santiago Yawarkani, wonderful senior artist working in Peru. With painting, I would say it's painting, but it's not, it's a very particular type of support that they use. Rembe Chisan, also indigenous, artists, working mostly in Lima, working in painting, so we'll have a room devoted to them. Suzanne Wenger and her adopted son. She's interesting. She's an Austrian woman, moved to Nigeria and became a Yoruba priestess. So they are working both with batik techniques and textiles. She was working since the 60s, 70s, and he just passed away a couple of years ago. And then we have two brothers, Philomé and Sénèque Aubin from Haiti, the school of many self-taught artists in Haiti that really work. There's another, they work in groups, no? But they all, each one have their individual works. And I would say Philomé and Sénèque are the most, among the most well-known Haitian artists of this group. Finally, we have a very different pairing, which is Jawad Selim from Iraq, one of the most important Arab modernist artists, who married to a woman, a British woman, Lorna Selim, who of course was born in England. She moved to Iraq, and then when Jawad passed away, she moved back to the UK. So very different, and working mostly in the 20th century, let's say. So very, and they are in the Núcleo Histórico. Very different types of configurations. I hope I replied.
Enrico Tantucci qui. Sì.
Volevo chiedere.
I would like to ask a couple of things. You said that decolonization is one of the guiding terms in this Biennale, and it was also one of the keywords in the Biennale of Leslie Locco for architecture. Do you see a continuity between her Biennale for architecture and your Biennale of art? And then, in general, the curator asks the countries that have a pavilion in their autonomy if possible, to work in line with the subject of the exhibition. How was it this year? Did they follow your indications somehow?
Yes, I think, decolonization can be understood in many different manners. I think one important aspect of it is a certain critique of a certain Eurocentric tradition that we see very present in art history and, of course, reflects in museums, collections, and art exhibitions. I think in the past couple of decades, we've seen many artists from the global south, beyond Europe and America, participating in exhibitions and biennales in different parts of the world, including Venice. I don't think it's possible for a curator of a biennale and a curator from Venice to do an exhibition without looking at artists from those parts of the world. But we haven't really had, it's the first time in almost 20-something years in the Biennale. There's a very long tradition of European curators and a few curators from the US. There was, of course, the wonderful Okwi and Wezor in 2015 from Nigeria, who was mostly working in Munich and New York at the time. So I think it took Roberto, Cicutto to appoint these curators from other parts of the world. And in that sense, I feel very connected to Leslie Loku. And I see it as a connection, and a continuation of Roberto Cicutto's, the president's choices in terms of the curator. Sorry, what was the second question?
The second, no, it was about the national pavilions.
So the national pavilions, I don't really have a conversation with the national pavilions. They develop their project completely in an autonomous way, and they are free to, let's say, respond to the framework or not of the exhibition, for example. But I do feel that you see it in many pavilions, that there has been, I don't know if they're responding to my title or my framework. In some instances, you actually see them writing about that, or it's just also a spirit of the time, I think. Because, for example, so we see a number of pavilions that are looking at foreigners or are looking at artists from their former colonies, or, for example, in Spain, the artist Sandra Gamarra, who is a Peruvian artist with a Spanish passport. In Britain, the Jonna Comfra, who is a Ghanaian British artist as well. But if you look at, for example, France, they announced their artists in the same day that I was announced. So much beyond, much before these processes begin. I'm appointed in December. The framework and title is announced in June. So by June last year, many pavilions will have chosen their artists already. And this was the case of France, one of the early countries, one of the early national pavilions to announce the artist. But they also announced an artist that is a French-Caribbean artist. So I feel there is some connection. But again, I don't think they couldn't have responded to my theme, my framework. But I think it's more sort of the spirit of the time.
Buongiorno.
Good morning. Thank you for promising beauty, as President Cicutto has stressed. And from your presentation, your promise seems to be realistic. I want to thank you also for having stressed the meaning in Spanish of the word stranger, which is somewhat different from the Italian term. As La Biennale and contemporary arts in particular can upset our categories, our normal categories, usual categories. One of the books that certainly has disrupted these categories was a book by Camus, The Stranger, dating back to 1942, Second World War. We hoped for that war to be the last. Unfortunately, there are still winds of war today. I wonder whether there will be a reference to this work, to this novel by Camus in your exhibition.
I don't recall a direct reference to Camus in the exhibition at this stage. Not off the top of my head, no. But it is indeed, an interesting reference. I read it maybe 40 years ago in my French classes, and I will go back to it. Thank you for reminding. Yeah.
Sono Ferruccio Gard, buongiorno.
I am Ferruccio Gard. I speak as an artist. I want to thank you. In the world, there is a trend, rightly, I would say, to leave room to young people. But it is also right, but we tend to forget fantastic artists who are older. And I have looked at the list of artists you have invited, and there is a certain number of them who are aged artists, if not passed away. Your leaving room to artists of a certain age really moved me, because you have proven to be very competent, very sensitive, and I really want to thank you for your sensitivity.
I hope I can live up to the expectations. If I may comment on that, I think, so the Biennale, of course, dates to late 1896, 1895 or 96? 95, the first Biennale. So I was looking at this temporal arch. That's why it starts in 1905, the Nucleo Storico, through 1990. I would say that the last 20 or perhaps even 30 years, this is of course primarily a Biennale devoted to contemporary art, but I think in the last at least 20, if not 25 years, there's been a strong presence of artists from the Global South in the Biennale, but this only starts in the 90s. So we don't see this really happening prior to 1990. It's very rare. That's why I thought it would be interesting to bring in these artists from the 20th century, from these different parts of the world, many artists that perhaps participated once in the 20th century, but they are now not well known at all. They might be very important, even canonical figures in their own India or Egypt or South Africa, but not well known across Europe. That's why I thought it was very important to include them, and that's why I think the Nucleo Storico is interesting. The Nucleo Storico has a larger number of artists than the Nucleo Contemporaneo, but the Nucleo Storico is only one work per artist, so it's more contained. as I said, 3 rooms, or perhaps 2 rooms and a double room. 2 sections in the central pavilion, 1 section in the Arsenale. So although the number is larger, it's because we have 1 artist, 1 work per artist. But really the largest presence is in the end in the Nucleo Contemporaneo. Thank you.
I thank you very much for inviting Timor-Leste, first time for the Biennale. And as the first time country, I would like to know if there are other countries that come here for the first time so that I can join them. Thank you.
Yes, there are.
Oh, there you go.
For the first, per la prima volta sono presenti.
We have for the first time in the art exhibition Benin, Ethiopia, Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, and the United Republic of Tanzania. These are the first participating, the countries participating for the first time to this Biennale.
Ci sono altre domande dalla stampa, dal pubblico?
Other questions from the audience? If not, I want to thank Adriano Pedrosa, I want to thank the press, I want to thank the audience, all those who support us. See you in April for the official opening of the Biennale.